Hello guys, welcome to week 2 of the Russian Football News Predictions League. Well, we had a few shocks last week. We had Krasnodar losing to Akhmat away. We had TSK Moscow losing away to Krylia Sovietov. That was probably the biggest shock. Zenit hung on to a 2-1 win against Tambov at home. Spartak Moscow needed added time to beat Sochi. So, we've got quite a lot of results that didn't really help with our prediction scores. But, guys, I'm really delighted to say that was the second highest turnout we've ever had in a week for the Predictions League. We had 43 players. Average score of, I believe it was 5.9, just let me check. 5.33, which is very respectable. And we had two newcomers top scoring with 10 points. So well done, Daniel Hughes and Scott Taylor. You are joint first in the Predictions League after week 1. All right, without further ado, let's crack on with week 2. Remember, the transfer window is still ongoing. So in terms of transfer news, if I remember while I'm doing the preview videos, I'll add it in. If not, it might be in the newsletters. Now, actually, that's one last thing before I do crack on. The newsletter is ready. It will be sent out to everybody who sent me their email address. If you see this and you want the newsletter and you're not sure, or you haven't sent your email address to the direct messages on the Russian Football News Facebook page, do so, and I will add you to the mailing list and I'll send you out the newsletter. All right, let's crack on. So we have our games are on Saturday and Sunday only this weekend, which is, I guess, a little bit tight yet. But what it means is the deadline. Most important, the deadline is midday Saturday, British summertime. So 2 o'clock in Moscow. Ufa against Krasnodar. All right, Ufa against Krasnodar. Well, last week, Ufa were away to Ural Yekaterinburg. They lost 3-2. They were 3-1 down, but they did come back and scored a second. Alexander Belanov is still suspended, so their debutant in goal probably will start again. So they didn't look too bad. They were okay, but they did concede 3 goals. And they are without Dmitry Zhivoglidov, of course. So we'll see how that goes for them. Krasnodar, though, away from home, they lost to Akhmat Grozny. They looked a little bit on the flat side. Matvey Safonov saved a penalty from Bernard Berisha, and then Berisha himself scored, so it could have been even more. Victor Klaas and Yuri Gazinski are injured, of course, long-term injuries for Krasnodar. Stefan Stramberg is still suspended from last season. So how do we see this one going? Well, Ufa, I do think, are going to struggle this season. I think Krasnodar they're going to be pretty angry, to be honest, at having dropped points to Akhmat, because it means they've got to play a bit of catch-up. I think Krasnodar will win this one. I don't think it's going to be a high-scoring one. We saw that it's still the beginning of the season and some of the players still need a bit of time. Tony Villena, Yunus Namli need time to settle in. Marcus Berg has signed for Krasnodar. That's an interesting signing. 32 years old, a lot of experience, led the line for Sweden in major tournaments. But is he really the player Krasnodar need? But perhaps he will score. We'll see. All right, so I'm going to go for let's just say 1-0 to Krasnodar. Okay, second up on Saturday, Krylia Sovietov at home to Arsenal Tula. Great win for Krylia Sovietov at home to TSK Moscow. 2-0 winners. Andrei Sobolov scored both. Very good, calm finish for the first, penalty for the second. Arsenal Tula, entertaining 1-1 draw with Dynamo Moscow, first game of the season, in fact, and 2 lovely goals as well. Miguel Cardozo for Dynamo Moscow, and for Arsenal Tula, it was... Actually, it slipped my mind who scored for them. But anyhow, they are a slightly weaker side than last season. And yes, they did come back. It was in torrential rain in Tula, but they scored a lot of goals at home last season. And it's the start of the season. We never know. Perhaps it was just a mini early blip and they will come back. But I actually think Krylia, their tails were up after that TSK Moscow win. They looked solid, composed, not necessarily flying forwards at the best of times. Alexander Anyukov signed for them just in time for last week. at right back. I think Krylia Sovietsov are going to win this one. Arsenal Tula are poor away from home, or at least they were last season. I'm only going to go for a 1-0 win for Krylia. Slightly on the conservative side, but I think they will win. Okay, CSKA Moscow at home to Orenburg. Well, I was shocked that CSKA lost to Krylia last weekend. They're now back at home. Orenburg are, well, yes, they've made 2 or 3 signings. None of the players I know, I'm afraid, so I can't really tell you much about them, but they have at least started to sign some players, but they are so much weakened that I think, other than their first choice starting 11, the slightest bit of tiredness or injury and they're going to be in real trouble. Last weekend, they lost to Rostov. They went 2-0 down. Really beautiful goal from Alexei Yonov, but I'll come to that later. Yeah, so I just don't see anything other than a CSKA Moscow win. I really don't see that performance away to Krylia Sovietsov being repeated at home to Orenburg. So I'm going to go for the win, and I think it will be a 2-0 win for CSKA Moscow. All right, moving on. We have Rostov at home to Spartak Moscow. Solid win for Rostov, like I mentioned. Eldor Shomurodov, Uzbekistan international, he's a big lad up front. He's really good in the air, and he scored a header to open scoring. Then Alexei Yonov cut in from the right, really lovely finish as well. Spartak Moscow struggled, if I'm being honest, at home. They did in the end win in the 93rd minute against Sochi at home. Newly promoted Sochi, who have cobbled together quite a good little squad. They've also actually signed, well, we'll come to them in more detail later, but they have half of the Zenit fringe players, but good players as well. They look solid. So although it looks poor for Spartak, they should be winning more than that against the promoted sides. It's still, they ground out a win. Rostov, well, they did take the lead against Orenburg. They went 2-0 up, but they did let them come back into it. They're not normally the most expansive side, and I might regret this prediction, but I actually think this is going to be a draw. I'm going to go for 1-1. Rostov do draw quite a lot at home, and I think Spartak might actually be a little bit more resilient after they managed to have the perseverance to win against Sochi. Lokomotiv at home to Tambov. Well, Lokomotiv, they missed a penalty in the first half, but they did take the lead with a spectacular Alexei Miranchuk free kick. But then Rubin Kazan came back. Rubin Kazan actually had slightly more possession and shots as well, I believe. So not the most inspiring performance from Loko. Tambov, away to Zenit. Well, they were tough the first half. They were relatively resilient. 0-0 at half-time, away to Zenit. Zenit quick-fire double after half-time, but then Tambov came back. Benito, their substitute, I'm not entirely sure what country he's from, but my word, what an individual goal. It beat Yuri Zhirkov for pace. Okay, that's not too much of a challenge, but he beat 2 or 3 men, cut inside, really confident finish. He could be an interesting little trump card for them this season. They'll need more than just him to stay up. And I still think that Lokomotiv are far, far better, obviously. Qualify for the Champions League again. They have 1 or 2 players missing, actually, Lokomotiv. Jefferson Farfan was injured from the Copa America. Boris Rottenberg Jr. is not really in their squad anyway, but he's first choice 11. A couple of other players are injured, but I think Lokomotiv will win. I don't think it'll be expansive or exciting, so I'm going to go for just 1-0. On paper, it should really be more, but I think Tambov showed a bit of resilience away to Zenit, and Loko, they just need the win after dropping points at home to Rubin. Dynamo Moscow against Rubin Kazan. Dynamo, well, they opened scoring with a lovely goal, Miguel Cardoso. They're going to be quite an interesting side to watch this season because they've spent a little bit of money. Their brand new stadium, and this will be their first game in their brand new stadium, competitive game anyway. Rubin, well, they did show some organisation and coherence against Lokomotiv. Like I say, some of their stats were more dominant. I'm still going to edge towards a Dynamo Moscow win here. I was surprised at Rubin's away win, and I don't think that's a sign of things to come consistently. They might pull out 1 or 2 results like that, but I don't see it as a long-term mood for them. I think Dinamo will be fired up for their first game in their new stadium, and they were okay away from home against Arsenal Tula. They have also signed Charles Cabaret. He may well come into the squad for this game. So I'm going to go for a Dynamo Moscow win, and again I'm going low scoring. I'm going to go for 1-0. We'll see what happens there, but I'm going for a 1-0 win. Actually, I missed out a game. We have, of course, on Sunday, Ural Yekaterinburg against Akhmat Grozny. Ural, they are at home again. Of course, they were home last weekend. 3 goals. Eric Rifalvi scored twice. Yuri Bavin, very calm finish actually for the third, but they did concede twice again. The defence didn't look certain. Roman Yemelyanov is a midfielder nominally. He's played quite a few games in the last year or two at centre-back, but he's not a natural centre-back. Denis Polyakov, I think, is a better defender, but he didn't play. I'm not entirely sure why. But defence didn't look great. Akhmat, well, what a win. A really powerful, dangerous performance there from Bernard Berisha particularly to win at home to Krasnodar. Away from home, slightly different story. They are slightly less reliable, and Ural's defence is poor, so I think Akhmat will probably score. Ural will be confident from having scored 3 goals. It rarely happens for them. So I think I'm going to have to go... Oh, God, I don't want to be biased here. I will be at the game reporting. I do follow Ural. I have a soft spot for them. Deep down, I know they probably shouldn't beat Akhmat, but something's telling me they will. I'm going to go for 2-1 to Ural. And then we have... this will be quite an interesting game. Sochi at home to Zenit. Last game of the weekend. Now, Sochi were impressive in their 1-0 defeat away to Spartak, but they are. I'm going to say this. They are Zenit light, not just because of the transfers they made, although those will have come about from the connection between the two clubs. Firstly, Sochi used to be Dynamo St. Petersburg. They were rebranded as Sochi, took over Dynamo St. Petersburg, place in the league system last season, got promoted straight away. The owner, Boris Rothenberg Jr., has had a lot of dealings with Gazprom in the past. He used to work for them and he has connections with the club. And also, the third point is that Orenburg look like they have had their pipeline cut off. Now, they've made 2 or 3 signings, like I mentioned, but they look a club in disarray. A lot of their best players are allowed to leave, which suggests that money is not there. And then suddenly Sochi, with their connections to Gazprom through Boris Rothenberg, suddenly are flush with money. So I think they'll be fine for this season. But we saw I'm going to draw parallels to this game, to Zenit away to Orenburg last season, because Orenburg were effectively the second team for the Gazprom empire, shall we say, within Russian football. And dubious decisions by the referee allowed a 2-0 win for Zenit. I'm going to go for basically the same thing here. Zenit will win. I don't think it'll be thrilling. They weren't convincing for the whole game for their win against Tambov. For a short period, 15-20 minutes after half-time, they did look really, really impressive, as they should do. They should be way above Tambov. But they only scored twice. So I don't think they're going to run away with this one. But I'm going to go for 2-0 to Zenit. Sochi are still... Well, they signed Alexander Bukharov, but he's 34 years old. He's a target man who's a bit of a bruiser, but he's not got a great deal of finesse. So I'm not sure they'll score. But Zenit, I think, will continue their winning start to the season. Okay, guys, that's all from me for the preview. Remember, the deadline is midday Saturday British summertime. So I urge you, get your predictions in today or Friday at the latest if you can. But that's when it is. Midday British summertime, 2 o'clock Moscow time. That's your deadline for predictions this week. A newsletter will be sent out. If you haven't received it, or you are not sure if you've given me your email, or you definitely haven't, send it to the direct message function on this Facebook page. Okay, send it there. I'll add you to the mailing list. I'll send out a newsletter to you soon. Okay, guys, good luck, and I hope you enjoy this weekend's football. Bye-bye for now.